Mom, welcome to another episode of my podcast, The Soulful Side of Life. Thank you for doing it again, because when I first interviewed you last summer, it was about your journey or your story, having encountered a car accident and cancer before 25 and how you dealt with that. But since it's Mother's Day weekend, I wanted to talk to you about motherhood and that. So welcome.
Thank you for having me.
My pleasure. Well, I feel it's a very meaningful Mother's Day this year because, like, just over a month ago, you were in the hospital for pneumonia, and it really was a shocker, and you were off your feet, knocked down physically, and having to do that or go through that. So I'm just really grateful that God has brought you this far and that you're not, worse off, and that you've really come a long way in the last month. How do you feel?
Compared to a month ago, I feel a lot better. Each day I get a little stronger. Some days it may, it feels like, it's just still the effect of still healing from the pneumonia. But I feel a lot better, stronger. So each day is a little bit better. The next day is a little bit better than the day before.
That's good. You've been a mother for over 30 years. What have you learned in this time?
There are books that are written about how to, you know, cook something, bake a cake, or how to sew or crochet, and to do different things. There's no book that really teaches you how to be a parent. There are people who have written books about parenting, but each child is different, and you just have to. What I have to do is just ask God to give me direction as to, when you would come to me as a little girl with a question or a little dilemma, for him to give me the right words to say to give you guidance. Did I make mistakes? Yes. Was I a perfect mom? No. But I tried to do things to the best of my ability. And sometimes when decisions that I made, you know, it could be that later on when I would sit down and reflect, that's what, and I guess it was the Holy Spirit talking to me. So, you could have handled that a different way, or you could have said this, you could have said that.
So you learned as you went.
Mhm.
I
Right.
see. Parenting isn't something, as you said, where it's a clear cut answer. It's, I guess, something that you have to take day by day
Yes.
and rely on God for wisdom and guidance. Because I guess it's not like having a dog or cat.
Right.
Another human being. It's another human being with its own will, mind, also its own calling.
Mhm.
And God creates humans to be individuals, and a parent has to learn how to guide and raise a child, raise another human being with values and discipline, but not stifling their personality, their calling, their purpose.
Right.
And I guess for that, it just takes a lot of relying on God because, yeah, you're a human being too. You're an individual. Parents are individuals too. And I guess you take it as you come. Do you feel, I know you're not a grandparent, but they say that parents tend to be better grandparents than parents, maybe because they've gone through the mistakes of being a parent. And can you kind of relate to that idea of why someone may feel they're a better grandparent than a parent?
Yes, you learn from your mistakes. And, as a grandparent, you're a little bit older
Mm.
and you're a little bit wiser. And as you get older, you want to gain more wisdom, and you ask God for that wisdom. And when, you see a situation that your grandchild is going through, or something that they are encountering, it may be something similar to what their mom or dad, what you had to, deal with their mom or dad. You think back to how you handled that situation, and sometimes it didn't turn out good. It didn't turn out the way you wanted it. The end results were not what you wanted them to be. As a, you I think, when you're a parent, you have to sit down and reflect a lot as to the choices and decisions that you made for your child, your children. And you realize that some of the choices, the decisions you made were not really ideal. And as a grandparent, as I said, you have a little bit more wisdom,
Mm.
and you can talk to that grandchild. You can help them to get through that circumstance. And then even if their mom or dad, if their mom or dad was your child, and they're coming, to you, you can give them the wisdom that you have attained, and you learn from what you didn't quite do right.
I guess it would be easier if you could start off with being a grandparent first and then a
Mhm.
parent,
Right.
but it doesn't work that way. You became a parent at 27,
Yes.
and in your opinion, do you feel that or when's the best time to be a parent in terms of like age, maturity, wisdom? I would imagine being a parent at 20 may not be the best. I mean, maybe 100+ years ago, yes, because the time was different. But
Mhm.
do you feel it's good to wait till you're over 25 to think about being a parent? And I know sometimes these things you can't control, but do you feel that you have better judgment and wisdom over the age of 25 as a woman?
I will say it this way. I believe it is, I think a lot of it has to do with how a person was raised, the type of home life that they had growing up.
Mm.
Did they have a stable home life?
Mm.
Were they taught? Were they held accountable for the decisions that things that they had done when they were a child? Looking at how their parents raised them. And I can say there are people who are in their early 20s who are excellent mothers, and they follow and they, probably, came from a strong family background,
Mm.
and there was structure. They were held accountable.
Mm.
And so if you're 22, 23 years old, and if you came from a background that, there was discipline, there was structure and so forth, then you tend to raise your children the way you was raised generally.
Mm.
Somebody in their late 20s, if they did not have a solid home structure
Mm.
foundation, how are they going to know how to raise, another human being, who they're responsible for?
Because I guess you can become a mom at 40, and if you
Mhm.
didn't have the structure and things, you could still be the destructive kind of parent.
Right.
You speak on discipline. When I was a child, you were very strict, really strict. Um, yeah, but I think because of how you were at that time, it helped me to be the kind of person like responsible, accountable, being mindful of how I treat other people. Um, and it's like the pastor of the church here in Columbia who says there's phases to parenting. Like I forget the phases, but at one point in parenting, you're like the cop. Another point, you're like I don't know, like a judge, or then you become, as your child gets older, you become their friend or their counselor.
Mhm.
And it's very unhealthy to stay trying to be the cop when your child is 25.
Mhm.
Um, what I want to ask specifically is about discipline. You discipline me really strongly. You're also a teacher, an elementary school music teacher, and you observe a lot about parents, mothers, as a teacher. And you always say, like, of course, kids, each generation from the time when you first started teaching in the early 80s, kids were much better behaved than they are now. But you always say that it's the parents who are the worst problem. Um, and a parent really, how a child acts is how they're being raised. So, why is it important for mothers to discipline and hold your children accountable and to, yeah, be kind of hard and tough in those early years? How does that make for the kind of adult they're going to become?
You're harder when they are younger
Mm,
because what you're doing, you're laying the foundation.
mm,
One thing my mother always said, when you're raising a child, you don't wait until they are walking to instill discipline in them. Before they can start walking, you have to instill discipline because when they start walking, when you say no, they know what you mean. You're not starting fresh at that point. When you got old enough, you was several months old, where I could put you in the little walker thing and you could get yourself around, move around. And one thing I never did was put things up out of your way. If I had something very delicate on the table or on the bookcase that you was not supposed to touch, I didn't put it up out of the way. And when you went to something and I would say no, and at first, you didn't quite understand, and you would put your little hand out to touch, and I would say, "No, Allison," and you would put your hand on it like you was gonna pull it off. Well, I went up to you and I popped your hand, and
that's
and
so mean.
well, and I'm gonna go a little bit further and explain the reason for that. I popped your hand, and and then there were a few times I had to pop your hand, and then you learned. And then it was to the point I didn't have to tell you no. Or there would be times you would go up to something, and then what you would do, you would turn and you would look at me, and I would look at you, and and all I had to do was just pop my hand, and you look, and then you would look down at your hand, and then I guess you would think about what the pop you had got, and then you would move away. And
I even got spankings.
yes,
I got
yes,
full on spankings.
yes, because parents should discipline their children because God disciplines us. And the Bible says that, if you don't discipline, you don't love your child. You don't love them. And what you're trying to do is you're trying to prepare them for the future.
Mm,
One thing my mother said, and I never forgot this. My dad died when I was 11 years old. And my mom's prayer was always to God. She prayed that he would let her live to see me and my sister become adults, that
mm,
we will be able to take care of ourselves. And she would ask him to let her live long enough for us to get to that point.
mm,
And he granted her that request. He
mm.
did. And she told us, and it resonates in my mind strong today. She would say, "Girls, one day my eyes are going to close and I'm not going to be with you. And all you're going to have to fall back on are the lessons that I taught you to help you to make it through this world." I never forgot that. And she would tell us that, okay, she would tell us that. And so the thing, even for you, is that yes, one day my eyes are going to close.
Not anytime soon.
All you would have are the lessons that I taught you to fall back on. And I remember when Mama died, and I was talking to a friend on the phone, And I remember saying I was crying. And I said, how am I going to know what to do when a very difficult situation comes up? How am I going to know how to handle it? Because all I had to do was talk to Mama. And she would give me the guidance. And she would tell me, well, Sandra, I think this would be the best thing to do. And I remember the friend said to me, you don't have to worry about that because whatever she taught you, it will always come back to you as to what you should do and how you should handle something. And that was all that was true because after her eyes closed and she left, and something would come up and I didn't know what to do, it would be like I could hear her voice talking and saying, this is what I think is best. And her directions would always come back to me. And I think it was God who sent voice to me to show me. Because God is a loving Father and He sees what we are going through. So when we get in a situation where we don't know, and especially like if you've lost a mother, then what He does is He sends help. He doesn't let you sit there and handle it alone. He sends help. And I believe what He did, He sent my mom's voice to me to say, this is what you should do.
There's a Bible verse that says that it talks about when our parents forsake us, God steps in
Yes.
and becomes that parent. But I think it's also fair to say that when you lose a parent, you become an orphan. You can become an orphan as an adult. It's not just for kids. He steps in and he fulfills that role in a strong way. So, yeah. Um, I do want to talk about your mom, but first I want to ask you, why do you think God made moms?
I think God made moms to be able to give love and nurture to their child. God is in heaven. And as you said, he can become the mother when you don't have a mother. He becomes your father when you don't have a father. And he wanted to have mothers on the earth to help raise and teach their children in the knowledge and to teach them about him. And that is a responsibility that he wants the next generation to know about him. And he wants it to continue from generation to generation to generation to generation, just like with the Israelites in the Bible. It was commanded in Deuteronomy that they were to teach their children, or when their child asked about this, or why are we celebrating this, the parent could tell the story of how God had taken care of them.
Yeah.
And
That's why the Jews today, they wear the phylacteries, or they wrap looks like a leather band around their hand, their arm, and then they have the Bible verse from Deuteronomy, which is a reminder of these things to remember God.
and that's when you become a mother, that's a major point that you are to teach your children
About God.
about God.
Yeah, you touched on an important point. When I lived in Berlin, God really guided me to a lot of teaching about various topics. I was teaching a Bible study course. That was a time where I had just become born again, and then God was like filling me with knowledge, like teaching, learning things, teaching things myself. But I had ran across a book. That's when I was staying with Lisa, and by John Eldredge, Wild at Heart. And this what John says in the book is, from our fathers, our earthly fathers, we get identity. Only a father can give his child identity, just as God the Father gives us identity. meaning who we are, our purpose. If you don't get identity from your earthly dad, you're a little bit off kilter because you didn't get what you needed. But from our mothers, we get nurturing. And I think from for a child who never knew or didn't grow up with a female figure, a lot of kids are adopted, but you get nurturing from that adoptive mother, or if you were raised by a grandmother. A woman teaches you how to love people, how to treat people, how to show affection to people. Uh, for a man, how to love your wife in certain ways, how to care for things. And without that, you can be off kilter in your other relationships, friendships, if you don't know a mother's nurturing love, whether it's your birth mother or biological mother or another woman who raised you. So it's very important, because also John Eldridge points out that in him, as it says in Genesis, we're found male and female. And I'm not saying God is a woman or God is a man. I'm just saying that our natures as males and females, humans on this earth, is found in God. The way that King David could go out and fight battles, that's a man's nature, is to protect and fight and provide. But the female part of God, not saying God is a female, but how he wants to be pursued and wanted and longed for and chosen. Women want that as well. And so we find our identity, our natures in God and who he is. And without a mother's nurturing love, I think it's hard to love other people. We may handle people in an aggressive, strong way because maybe we didn't learn that. What woman from the Bible is inspiring to you?
There are several,
Mm.
but the one that inspired me is Hannah.
Mm.
And Hannah, look, she was a woman of great faith. And even though, you know, God had closed her womb where she could not conceive to have a child, and her husband's other wife was having one child after another, and she was even ridiculed and picked on, and back at that time, when a woman could not have children, that was like a disgrace, a shame.
Mm.
You was looked down upon.
Society identity for a woman was found in marriage and motherhood.
Right, and felt like you had, you was looked upon like you had committed a great sin, and then God was punishing you for this. But God chose to close her womb, and and then when when she went into the temple to pray, and her heart was just she was just burdened with this grief and what she had to endure day in and day out, not only from her husband's second, his other wife, but probably from the other women within the village, within the community.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then and you know what I love about her, what she did? She went to the temple,
Mm-hmm.
and the only one that she could truly pour her heart out to was God.
Mm-hmm.
There was no shame. There was no fancy words were used. It was just Hannah in her grief, letting God know her feelings.
Mm-hmm.
And I imagine God sitting there looking at her, listening to her, and how she poured her heart out to him.
I find it interesting in First Samuel's, it's Hannah's story, chapter 1, verse 8, where it says her husband Elkanah would say to her, Hannah, why are you weeping? Why don't you eat? Why are you downhearted? Don't I mean more to you than 10 sons? And when I read that, if I were Hannah and he's sitting there She's got this great desire to be a mother,
Mhm.
and he's like, aren't I enough? Am I not more than 10 cents? No, you're not.
Yeah.
No, I want a child. Of course, he means something to her, but my question is, why do you think God puts the desire in women? I'm not saying there are men who desire to be fathers too.
Right.
And you need men and women to desire. We need, because you got to populate the earth, right?
Right.
But I think women have this strong desire to be mothers from the time we're like 2 years old, from the time that we can have baby dolls, because we see little girls walking around with their little strollers with the baby doll. It's her baby, watch my baby, and she's combing her hair and she's putting a dress on her and changing her diaper and she's holding her like she thinks she's grown up
Right.
already, but she's 2 years old holding her baby. We have this desire from that young age. A lot of women, some women don't desire to be mothers, and not everyone's called to be a parent. But why do you think God puts a desire in women for motherhood?
I think he did that because God has a desire for us as his children.
Mm.
And, we were made in the image of God. So God is our father. And we inherit, just like from your biological parents, you inherit certain traits. And, your physical traits, your mental traits. We get traits from him. He is our creator. And it is his desire that because he desires us and he desires us to come to love him and to seek him and to get to know him. That's something that he put into females, that I believe God said, I'm going to give them this trait from me
Mm.
because they come from me. They belong to me. And just like, we belong to him and he cares for us. With earthly mothers, we have the desire to take care of someone else, to love someone else.
Mm.
And that comes from the Heavenly Father, because that's one of the traits that he has.
That's for everything in our life. This life as we know it is just a reflection, a parallel of what it is in heaven. uh Buckingham Palace, Windsor Castle, when I went, I mean, I was just blown by Windsor Castle and the beauty, but it's just a parallel of what heaven's palaces looks like. The desire to succeed in the workplace, to have respect, to build something, to do something on this earth. It's God's giving us that desire. It's a piece of him. It's a reflection, a parallel of accomplishing something. To build family, marriage, kids is as you're saying, a reflection, a parallel of who God is in his nature. Him parenting us is a reflection of us parenting kids. Even marriage, even if you don't have kids, to love somebody like that is a reflection of God's love for us, a reflection of Christ's love for the church. So um yeah, to be that desire that God gives women for motherhood is just God saying, I want you to know what it's like to love in a parent way. And I guess what does it feel like? What is it to love as a mother, as a parent? How would you put that in a sentence or two?
When you was born and I held you for the first time, I did not realize that I could have that much love for this helpless human being who I'm going to be responsible for. And I wanted to do everything that I could to protect you, to shield you. And I knew that there would be things I would not be able to shield you from, that you was going to have to experience, because that's the growth process. And when we have times that are not good, it's teaching us that we have to rely on our Heavenly Father. Everything can't be perfect. But I wanted to do, and you know what? When I had to discipline you, I'll say this, when I had to discipline you, and I used to hear my mom say this. She said when she would have to whip us, she would say, "This is going to hurt me more than it hurts you." And I couldn't understand that because I'm thinking to myself, how is it going to hurt you more? I'm the one going to be feeling the pain. I'm going to be the one crying. How is it going to hurt you more than it's going to hurt me? But when I had to discipline you, when I had to whip you, that's when I understood. And then after I whipped you, sometimes I, would go in my bedroom or I would be by myself. It broke my heart. It hurt me to have to whip you. And then that's when I realized this is what it feels like for the Father. When he has to discipline us, it hurts him. He doesn't like to discipline us, but children need to be disciplined. They have to be taught. They have to be held accountable. They have to endure. When God disciplined the Israelites, when he caused other nations to overtake them, it broke his heart. So it's showing that as a mother, there are times that, when our children are doing the right thing, it's a happy time. It's a joyful time. And it's a time to laugh and have a great time. But when they don't follow directions, you are left with no choice but to discipline them, and it brings sadness, it brings heartbreak. And then when I had to discipline you, like I said, I understood what my mom meant. It hurt me more than it hurt you, because
But it's
it's
necessary
necessary.
because even God says, like, he chastens us, but if he didn't, it means he doesn't love us, and we would never grow
Right.
and be sanctified. Um,
There is something I want to say before this podcast ends. And a colleague said this to me. And like I said, as a teacher, we're dealing with children coming from different backgrounds. And you can tell the ones who there is structure in the home. And then you can tell which child is not getting the structure. Because, as my mom said, if you don't do your homework at home, it shows when you go out in public. And your child shows you what happens at home. And there are children who do come from structure, but they get with the other children are who don't, they're not being taught the same
and their
lessons,
influence.
right? And they're easily influenced. And when you call the parent, then that's when the tears come, and you know what's going to happen when they get home, because the parent is going to hold them accountable for the choices that they made. And generally I don't have any problems with them, again, because, as the parent has told me many times, all you have to do is pick up the phone and call me. Don't hesitate. Don't give them another chance. Just call me. And I remember a colleague said to me, you know, we can't be our children's friend. And that's the problem today. Parents don't want their child to be upset with them.
Well, little kids,
Yeah,
I think,
yeah,
adult
yeah.
kids, you
Yeah, they
have a
don't want them
friend.
to be upset with them, and they want to give them what they want.
Mm,
And you can't be their friend, because if you're their friend when they're little, you will have problems when they become
teenager.
teenagers. That's when it's going to come back to bite you. And I remember a
And
colleague.
not just that, even in their 20s.
Yes, yes. And I remember my colleagues saying, she and I were talking, and this is true, and I see this all the time as a teacher. When you raise your children, and how did she put it? She said, when you discipline your children, you can spoil your grandchildren. But when you spoil your children, you will be raising your grandchildren.
Mm.
And I see that happen. I've seen it many times.
I think it's biblical, godly wisdom. God gives people children to raise with values and structure so that they can become good adults and people on this earth. And when you fail to follow the Bible's guidance on raising children, or even if you're not a Christian and you don't raise your children with values and discipline, it will it will be great ramifications for your generational line.
And one thing also, and now I keep going back to what my mom said, and she told us this. She said, as the Bible said, children are a gift from God.
Mm.
And he blessed me to have you girls.
Mm.
And she also said, he has already outlined in his book how I'm to raise you.
Mm.
He's given me the blueprint, the instructions as to what I'm to do as a parent,
Mm.
to raise you
Mm.
and to teach you in the, about him.
Mm.
And she said, if I don't do what he has commanded
Mm.
in his book in raising you,
Mm.
if I don't do my part,
Mm.
that when I stand before him, I will have to give him an account. And it's sad to say there are a lot of mothers and fathers
Mm.
who will have to give an account because they didn't do what they were supposed to do. And I don't want to be that mother who stands before God
Mm.
and he looks at me and he says to me, I sent Allison to you. I sent her to you, and there was a job that you had to do, and you didn't do your job.
Well, you did your job. You disciplined me and
Yes.
got me in line. Did I turn out okay?
You never gave me an ounce of trouble. And I think about that time when you threw the tantrum with your kindergarten teacher, and I got this long letter on not 8.5 by 11 size paper. It was the legal size paper. The first page was filled from top to bottom, and it went to the second page, and the second page was like three-fourths full of what had happened at school that day and the temper tantrum that you threw. And
I got the worst whipping.
I knew I had to nip that in the bud because if I didn't, you would have carried that behavior into elementary school, middle school, and high school
And
and
adulthood.
adulthood. And I had to nip that. I could not let that slide by.
And I never got written up in school from first grade to 12th grade. I never had a speeding ticket. You never got a call from the school.
Because you knew what the consequence was going to be.
Mm.
And unfortunately that's not what's being taught.
Mm.
And another thing, again, as I said earlier, a lot of people, young women who become mothers, they were babies themselves when they became mothers,
Mm.
and there was no one to teach them.
Mm.
And if you didn't have anyone to teach you, to show you the ropes and to show you what responsibility is,
Mm.
how can you teach that to another
Mm.
human being?
Yeah, that's indeed true. Last question. I'm curious, what lessons, what's one thing you learned from your mom? And what's one thing you learned from your mother-in-law, dad's mom, that has impacted you as a mother?
The lesson that I learned from my mom is there is a God that I will have to answer to. And she had done her best. And she told us, I've done my part in raising both of you. And I have tried to the best of my ability to follow what God has commanded in teaching you. And if you go out there and you wallow around in the mud and you get in trouble and you do something wrong or you break the law, it wasn't because that you wasn't taught. It's because those were the choices that you made, and you will have a God that you will have to answer to. And just to piggyback on that, there are children who are raised in Christian homes, but some of those children make decisions that they want to do things on their own.
Mm.
And a mother never stops praying for her children,
Mm.
even when they stray.
Mm.
her prayers for them to come back.
Mm.
And I always was mindful that I have a God that I'm going to have to answer to.
And from Grandma Portee, what did you learn?
From from your paternal grandmother, and she was just like a mother to me. I did call her, Mrs. Portee. I called her Mama also because
And you talk to her like every Sunday on the phone.
yes. And she and I were close. We were very close. And she grew up in a Christian home. Her father was a minister, and she did things to the best of her ability in raising, your dad and his siblings. And one thing I learned from her is that, you rely on God. You rely on him, and he will, and no matter what we face, he will get you through.
Mm.
And you know, and to show love
Mm.
and to just live your life for him.
Mm.
That was something that I learned, that learning your life, and a lot of things that she said and what she talked about, I realized it came from her upbringing,
Mm-hmm.
the home that she grew up in,
Mm.
and the lessons that she and her siblings, she came from a large family, and the lessons that were taught to them. So those were the things that I learned from, my mother-in-law and from my mother. And those are things that I still carry. Here I am, Lord's willing, I'll be 66 in, in a few months. But I don't forget the things that I was taught.
Mm.
And those are the lessons that I would carry with me to my grave.
Mm.
And so I always remember, and I say to God, God, I want to be found in your favor.
Mm.
That when I stand before you, you can say, well done, my child.
Mm.
Enter here into your home for eternal rest.
Mm.
And that's what I want for you.
Mm.
And that's what I try to do for you as a mother.
Thank you. What I've learned from you is how to treat people. You're quite the celebrity here in this town, and you've taught hundreds of thousands of students. No, really, I've done the math. And kids, people who are adults now, 40 years old, 30 years old, or they could be 16 years old and they were in your classroom. They love you. You love tough with your students. The way that you parented me, and you're loved for it. People love you. From your mom, she died when I was 3, so I didn't know her, but I would say what I've learned from her, the bit that I know about her is that she also was loved by people. Um, she had these one-liners of wisdom, and you said that she said about, how a person's life was lived by how many people go to their funeral or something like that. And her funeral had people standing outside, line wrapped around the church. And it shows a testament to her character and how she treated people. And it's important. I think when you have people that treat people well, it shows that they're walking with Jesus, that they know Jesus, because our relationship with our earthly father is a parallel to God the Father. Our relationship with our earthly mother is a parallel to our relationship with the Holy Spirit, but our relationship with people is a parallel to our relationship with Jesus. And for people like you and your mom, who have these great relationships with people, it just shows that you spend time in the presence of Jesus. And from Dad's mom, um, I would say I learned how to be assertive and speak up and make noise and complain when it's necessary. because it's a tough world out there, and it's a dog eat dog world, and you have to know how to stand up for yourself and advocate for yourself and for others. And she had no problem calling out problems and putting people in their place. And I would say I get a little bit of that from her. I mean, I certainly get it from Dad, who he got it from her. So I've taken away things from both grandmothers and you. Um, yeah, if I could just have a drop of how you treat people and how you're loved by people, I'm would be on a good path. And yeah.
I used to say if I could be half the woman my mother was in her relationship with people,
Mm-hmm.
that
You're right there with it. You're not even half, you're a whole of it, because you are loved, and people come, your students come and see you. And when I was a child, I couldn't go anywhere, Walmart, this restaurant, that restaurant, without Miss Portee and people coming up to you. I'm like, oh, but it just shows that you're loved, and you really are quite the celebrity, and you mean a lot to a lot of students that have passed through your classroom. So thank you for doing this podcast episode.
thank you. And I want to say to all mothers in the world, I want to wish you all a happy Mother's Day.
Yes.
And may God continue to bless you, and may you feel his presence every day, and that you can, and I want you to truly rely on him, because he's everything. He is your refuge. And even if you have children who have strayed away, don't stop praying for them. I will be praying for them also, that their hearts would turn back to God, and just continue to do what you're doing and living the life and letting Jesus shine through you. And that those lessons that you taught your children, they will carry them with them throughout the rest of their lives, and also pass it on to the next generation. So happy Mother's Day, and may God's blessings shower upon you.
Yeah. Happy Mother's Day to all the mothers and mother figures out there. I hope that you enjoyed this podcast episode and that you have found a soulful connection to the conversation. God bless you, and until the next episode, go bless somebody else.